Welcome, everyone, to the One More Game podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Jeremy Culver, a.k.a. Darcy, and with me is the California Thirst Quencher, Pete Leja. Pete, how you doing, man?
Jeremy, I am super ready to discuss this Game Show Awards. I didn't get a chance to watch it. I'm going to be open with the public. We like to be open with our fans. I didn't get a chance to watch the full show, but I was trying to keep up to date on at least the winners and some of the reveals, and even the random person that walked up on stage with the Game of the Year winners. Yeah. And everybody was just like, yeah, I guess we're just going to let that happen. So a lot to talk about today,
Yeah, definitely a lot to talk about. I should say, co-streamed that over here, right here on youtube.com/pressstart28. If you are listening to this on the podcast services, you can go over and watch that live stream where we reacted to everything that's going on and my utter confusion by what happened there at the very end. It was one of those things I think like everyone thought was like, this kid must be part of like the team that made the announcement, that won the Game of the Year, and so like no one thought anything of it until, of course, when he spoke and when he brought up Bill Clinton. I think it was like everyone's like, wait, what? This definitely is not part of the situation at hand, which, man, of course, has sparked a lot of discussion since then, and we're going to get into that here in a little bit as well. Mm-hmm. But everyone, welcome to the One More Game podcast. This is a podcast that is centered around making sure you're informed about all the video game news happening around the world, whether it's Nintendo, Xbox, PlayStation, or PC. If there's news that you need to know about, we'll make sure that you know about it. When you're listening to this on your podcast service, make sure you hit the subscribe button or the follow button, depending on what your service offers. And if your podcast service allows reviews, please leave a 5-star review and tell everyone why you love the One More Game podcast, because we really enjoy bringing this to you each and every week. If you'd like to be part of the show by asking a question or suggesting a topic for discussion, head on over to pressstartnews.net/onemore-game and fill out that submission form, and your submission could be used on the next episode. Or you could drop it off in our live chat over here on youtube.com/presssstart28, and we will reference it as it comes up in the show. A little bit of housekeeping I want to make mention. We are going to be doing our One More Game podcast Game of the Year Awards episode on the night of Thursday, December 22nd, and that we don't have exact time yet because, of course, it's going to be me coming off of work and in the situation. But we're going to be talking about games that we played in 2022 and our awards for it, not necessarily if they released in 2022, because with Pete and I's day jobs, we just necessarily can't play all the games that come out in 2022. So we're just going to talk about the games that we played in 2022 and experienced in 2022 for our awards. And then we're going to take a small hiatus into the new year. So then that way Pete can have some time off for the holidays, I can have some time off for the holidays, and we will resume our podcast in early 2023. Pete, are you excited for the little bit of a break from the podcast for just a tiny bit of time?
Yeah, I also really appreciate you not totally just throwing me under the bus right there at the start, where you're just like, oh, so Pete can get a little bit of time off for the holidays, and then you finally threw yourself in there. I was like, whoa, we're both getting this time off. What's going on there, buddy? So I was like, I'm really happy you didn't just throw me under the bus with all the fans. Have them all coming after me, man. That would have been kind of rude.
Hey, I'm just going to be honest here. I am the lovable host, and you're the bullseye, all right? You're the one.
I am the grouch. I am the Grinch.
I send
Grinch,
all the hate towards you, and I'm like, look, I'm
don't
just the innocent bystander.
Don't let the Santa hat fool you. I am definitely the Grinch of the show.
For those that are listening to this on the podcast, Pete is wearing a Santa hat, being a little festive here on the episode. Mm-hmm. I'm not. I maybe we'll wear it for our next episode when we. Well,
you got the Bears thing on. It's football season. We're deep in the thick of it. We're about to hit the bowl season, and this is the magical time of year where the Trans-Siberian Orchestra is played. Going to break for most of the football games. So, I mean, it's kind of festive.
Yeah. See, there you go. Look at that. We've found a loophole. I'm festive as well as Pete being festive. Now it's time to get into the podcast because we've been talking about quite a bit of things. So if this is your first time to the podcast, everybody, welcome to the podcast. I hope you enjoy your listen and I hope you enjoy your stay. But if you are returning, you already know what it is. We start off every single podcast talking about what we've been playing lately. So, Pete, what have you been playing lately?
I got a confession. I haven't really played anything new the last week or so. I haven't had a lot of time. So the best I can do is give you some updates on a couple games I have been playing recently. Pokemon, still great, still awesome. I finally beat the first gym leader. It's my wind down game at night, even though there's technically battling involved. It's just like just walking around and doing stuff. It's really fun. Still been having a blast with that. Hopefully, I am getting to a point where it's a little bit like that. It seems like they're throwing so much at you in terms of choices. Like, oh, you can go with this person who's like looking at dig sites for stuff. You can go and battle the gym leaders, and it's kind of like it's kind of like one of those things where it's like not a whole lot of structure. I think at the point I'm at, so it's kind of like, oh, okay, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I also still haven't figured out the map yet, so that's been kind of that's something I probably need to work on a little bit more. So that's been a little harder to find some of the stuff on the map instead of just walking around. But on the bright side, I'm having a fun time just walking around and battling trainers and finding new Pokemon and stuff. So that part's been cool. The next game I'm going to talk about really briefly is Batman Arkham Knight. Playing a little bit more of that. And I've been, at first I didn't dig the vibe because I don't remember if I described this last week, but it's felt like a weird combination of Metal Gear Solid and Halo.
Yes, you did.
At the start.
You said
Okay,
it felt
I thought
less
I did.
Batman-y too.
Yes. As I played more, it started to feel more Batman-y. It started to feel more like. So I've been enjoying it a lot more than I did at the start. So instead of just going around and just blowing up stuff with your Batmobile and tanks and whatnot, you're actually kind of getting into like the actual like fighting the characters and stuff like that, and kind of like the mental headspace of what's going on with Batman and the other stuff. So I've been enjoying that aspect a little bit more, and it led to a better experience overall that I've actually, thoroughly enjoyed. I will say, before I continue, one thing I'm noticing I become less a fan of overall, this is not Batman Arkham specific, it's kind of the more superhero genre in general. It's become more mature. And the mature part I enjoy, because, I'm older, I'm more mature. I don't like the things I did as a kid. But the fact that like it feels like superheroes now have to be like have a darkness to them, instead of just like, not that they have to be like incorruptible pureness, but like one of the things that I really enjoyed about Kevin Conroy as Batman is he gave this sense of humanity with his representation of the character, a sense of like kindness. Like one of the scenes in Justice League Unlimited, one of the most grabbing and sad scenes is there's a villain character called Ace. She's like a psychic kind of thing that can like change things with her mind and stuff. And she's basically having an aneurysm, and if the aneurysm goes off and she dies, like could be a catastrophic thing that kills like, thousands or tens of thousands of people. And so Batman goes in there with this basically not anesthesia, euthanasia, like a drug or something that he's supposed to use on her. And she's like, she can read minds. So she's like, I know you're not going to use that. And he's like, no, I'm not. And basically the story is he just sits with her until she calmly passes away. It's a very touching, moving scene. Go watch it if you haven't seen it yet. And like he has a humanity of that, and you don't get that as much, not just with the Arkham series so much, or in general with a lot of the takes on the superhero arc. So it's I'm kind of missing that a little bit. But again, that's not Arkham specific. That is kind of like seems where the superhero genre has gone as it's gotten more mature. And I think it could do a little bit more of that. So sorry about the random diatribe on that. But so what have you been playing lately, Jeremy?
Well, first I want to say you don't need to apologize, because I found it very insightful as someone who did not really watch the Batman cartoons growing up. Like I watched a little bit, just like I think almost any little kid did growing up, like Saturday cartoons type of thing, and you kind of turn it on and stuff. But I was not like a faithful watcher that watched a lot of these things. So I had no clue about that episode. And so like you just describing it was like that was a very awesome, I guess, like interpretation or, delivery of the character. And I do think it's also important, and I think you made mention of it, though. It is important to make mention that, of course, the Arkham Knights games are the more mature aspects because of the Arkham setting that it takes place, which is the more mature comic book series line that for those that don't know, to keep in mind. So like it is a little bit more mature, but like you said, it wouldn't hurt it to not be overly mature in its delivery at times, just because at the end of the day, it is still Batman. It is still a comic book character that'll, of course, a lot of people enjoy. So I will also say the last night, I think it was, or maybe it was the night prior, I went and I almost considered downloading all of the Batman games, because I think I had made mention before. I own all the Batman games, and because those that may not remember, the PC version, I've made mention of this on the podcast, but the PC version of Batman Arkham Knight was so terrible at launch. Like, it was basically completely unplayable, and I had gotten that copy for free from upgrading my PC, that Warner Brothers gave all people who owned the Batman Arkham Knight games every Batman Arkham game released for free as a like.
Oh, that was an Epic Games thing, wasn't it? Like an Epic Games thing. At least that's where I got it from. Maybe
this
that
was
wasn't
on
Epic.
Steam for me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Right. So I think it was for anyone on PC. It was just like the PC version was so broken that they were just like, we're sorry. While we try to fix this, here is Arkham Asylum, Arkham City, Blackgate, and whatever. Like so I own all of them, and I scrolled past them the other night and thought about downloading them because you were playing them. But I, as everyone knows, am playing so many games right now. I was like, I do not need to add more games.
I have a backlog.
I do not need to add more games
backlog.
For me to play. Yeah. So for myself, I've been playing, of course, a little bit more of Lost Eidolons. Still great. Still having fun with that. Been playing a little bit more of Pokemon Scarlet. Similarly, still having fun. Still haven't beat the first gym leader. Been roaming around just catching a ton of Pokemon, but haven't advanced to the gym leader just yet. The other thing, though, that I have been playing, or I should say I played a little bit more last night, is I dove into Soul Hackers 2. For those that don't know, that's a little bit of background. Soul Hackers 2 is part of the Shin Megami Tensei series, in a sense. And the reason why I say in a sense is because they dropped it for Soul Hackers 2. But it's from Atlas, same people who made Persona games, those that, of course, are a little more popular than some of the Shin Megami Tensei games. And Soul Hackers 2 is a loosely sequel to the original Soul Hackers game that released back, if I remember correctly, on the Sega Saturn many, many, many years ago, and then was remastered, in a sense, or re-released for the Nintendo 3DS when I was in college. So I think it was like 2012 or something of that nature. And I have really wanted to play it for a while. I still have not played that one, but I picked up Soul Hackers 2 during Black Friday sales, and on PlayStation 5, if you have the PlayStation Plus Premium subscription, there is a trial that you can do with Soul Hackers. So I had originally downloaded that trial and was playing it, enjoyed it. I was excited for the game before it came out, so tested it out just to confirm that I actually did want to get it, and then I liked it. So on Black Friday, I picked up the copy, and last night, because I had some downtime.
Of other games.
Yes, a lot of other games. You can go check my socials on Twitter and TikTok if you want to see all of them, besides the 2 digital games. But I played a little bit more of it last night, and I'm still enjoying it. I'm still having fun with it. It is a dungeon crawler at its core, so like that is important to keep in mind with Soul Hackers. So it's a lot of just battling. There is still story. There is some components with that aspect, and I'm still fairly early in it. I'm only like 2.5 hours into the game, but it is fun. My one complaint that I will say personally is that the combat, if you don't have fast forward mode on, is a little slow, and then if you have the fast forward mode on, it's a little quick, and I wish that there was like a little in between, because there's like a little bit of downtime, and it's hard to describe without seeing the game, but there's like a little bit of downtime between you selecting your skill that you want and it doing the skill and you getting ready to do your next character's skill. Like, they kind of give it a little bit of like, and you talked about it before in past episodes, like it kind of gives you a little area to breathe, but sometimes it feels like that area to breathe is just a little too long. And I wish it would kind of like, the move hits, you see the damage, you see the thing, and instantly goes into, all right, your next character, what do you want your next character to do? And there's that little bit of gap. But when you have the fast forward mode on, it gets through it quickly, and so it feels good. But then at times it feels like I don't have that area to breathe to see the move go, right? And that's kind of the thing, is like, I want it to get into the next character's combat just a tad bit quicker following the end of the move, but I still want to see the move. And that's the slight imbalance personally that I struggle with.
I feel like usually this is for like difficulty levels. There's been several times in my gaming life that there's like all right, here's one extreme, not necessarily extreme, but for lack of a better term, here's one extreme, here's another extreme. Why isn't there something in the middle? That's what I want. Like, this sounds like something like that, where it's like, I want like a half and half kind of mix. Usually, like I said, it's a difficulty level. It's like, all right, well, this normal is too easy, but hard is too difficult. Can I have like a normal hard, like something like right in the middle, something like that? So it sounds similar to that. yeah, semi-hard, over normal. I don't know.
Over normal. I like that one. We're gonna call that now. From now on, it's over normal. But
like, and it sounds something like that for you that you're looking at for this thing. It's kind of funny.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. Like the combat is fine, and all that, I guess, to go along with it. I think like it runs how you want it to be, but the problem is like I said, and it's hard to explain without like showing the gameplay. So like you have to just you have to trust me, bro. All right, Source, trust me, bro, on this one. But it's just like, it's basically like following the move. There's like this, like, it feels like, I should say, this like 2-second gap before it goes to your next character to be like, all right, select their move. And so it doesn't feel snappy. And that's the thing. It's like, I still want to see the move. I still think the combat is exactly what you want when it comes to like Persona, especially because it draws a lot on like Persona 5's combat. It's there. It's just, it doesn't feel snappy. Like, all right, here's the next character's move. And as someone who loves turn-based combat, some people may go, well, this is a negative of turn-based combat. And I would say, no, like, this is not, like, I've played so many turn-based combats that feel snappy, because it's just like, there's the move, you see it action, here's your next character, start going for it. And it's almost like it does this whole, like, does the move, let's sit and admire it for a second. All right, now let's go to the next character. And it's like, no, I want it like to feel like, again, that snappy combat. But then, like I said, when you turn on fast forward mode, it speeds it up. It speeds everything up, right? So your characters move faster to do their move. And like, that's when it's like, okay, now it's going too fast. Like, I need it just, I need a point, like a 1.5 speed, not a 2.
No, like, is that a criticism? Like, I've played some turn-based combat games where it's like, that is it. Like, I love Lunar's Silver Star Story, but because you like kind of decide how the turn goes for your characters before that, it's like really choppy in that regard. But like Final Fantasy VII from back in the day, Final Fantasy IX with the active time battle bars and stuff, like that was always snappy combat. I was never like thinking like, oh man, I'm really like slowing down. I guess maybe with the limit breaks and stuff, because of how grandiose they made those, you could make an argument. But yeah, I don't remember it being like, oh man, that's a really slow combat. So
yeah, it's one thing like I have seen or heard, people who don't like turn-based combat, they point to like, or they say things that would point towards like what I'm describing with Soul Hackers, where like there's too much of a lull between the I choose to attack and the attack actually going out. But like you're describing, and I completely agree. Like Final Fantasy X is another one that doesn't have an active turn-based battle where, like, of course, if I just sat there and didn't make a move, my enemy will still attack me. Like Final Fantasy X has a legit turn-based combat, but it's snappy. Like each move is like, it's going at the, at a good speed that you feel like there's actually this dance of a battle going on. Yeah. And that's where, like, again, like I said, it's almost like Soul Hackers 2 just has this, like, this pause and admire after each move. And it's like, I don't want that pause and admire.
It's like you're taking a 3-point shot and just stand there and watch it.
Yeah. It's like just like,
put back on defense.
I shot the ball. Now I got to play defense, and that's that's my only gripe. But
Yeah. Anyway, we've been talking about what we've been playing for a while, but let's get into our topics for today. Some of the topics we're going to cover today are the FTC has finally filed the suit against Microsoft Activision deal. Microsoft is also raising prices of new first-party games. But first, we're going to talk about the big thing, the Game Awards show. Happened on December 8th. It was three and a half hours if you include the pre-show. They wanted to be 2.5, so went a little bit longer than they wanted, but there's a lot of stuff that happened in that show. So many winners, so many awards given out. But maybe even the bigger thing, some of the surprise that happened, the game trailers, the updates of some of the gameplay trailers for the games coming out, and then just like new announcements of games that are coming out, release dates for games that we didn't know. I think some of these games we didn't even know they were coming out like next year. We kind of thought maybe like late 23, but probably more likely 24. So that was a little bit surprising in that regard too. But Jeremy, so I guess we'll zoom out really quick. Zach Lowe loves saying in the low post. We're going to zoom out. We'll take a big picture. What was? I'll ask you two questions and then we can go from there. What was your favorite part of the Game Awards, and also what was the biggest surprise that happened?
So I would say my favorite part of the Game Awards really came down to like, I know it ended up getting ruined in a sense, but getting the Game of the Year to Elden Ring. And the reason why I say that is because, you know, we talked about it beforehand, but the runaway of this competition for Game of the Year came down to God of War Ragnarok and Elden Ring, and you saw that throughout the votes throughout the night. Now, God of War Ragnarok took the most awards home, I think, with 6, and Elden Ring took 5 home. If I last counted correctly, I should say.
I'll count it already. But go ahead.
But what really, I guess, took the cake, in my opinion, is that for Elden Ring, and I cannot remember Miyazaki's first name, so I apologize for that. But to my knowledge, this is Miyazaki's first Game of the Year win, and so you could tell as much as there was, of course, the translation that needed to happen, you could tell how much it meant to him getting the Game of the Year nomination and then, of course, winning with it. And then the little bit of nuggets that were dropped essentially from him about the love for this game, what the studio wants to do, how the studio doesn't want this essentially to be like the peak of the studio, that there's potential DLC coming for Elden Ring, because he said that there is more they want to do with this world, aspect. So it was, I loved that aspect because it showed the, in my sense, the vulnerable side, so to speak, of the game business and what it means to the individual people. Because sales, of course, are the driving factor. We've talked about it before. Sales determine whether games get made or not and things of that nature. And obviously, Elden Ring sold like hotcakes, so we knew more is coming from it. But it goes to show how much the awards and the recognition still matter to these people and to these developers. And so, that was definitely my favorite thing. And it looked like, did you finish counting? Was I correct? Got it.
I was just going over to see how many awards, but that doesn't really matter. How many awards total, but that doesn't really matter. So Elden Ring had 4 awards taken home, and you were right. I believe you said 6, and that was God of War. So God of War won the most overall awards, even though they didn't win, I guess, the big one.
Yeah. So the God of War, like I said, I took them to the most overall awards, but Elden Ring, I was 1 off, so there's 4 on it. But that was the thing. So for me, the biggest surprise announcement honestly came down to Death Stranding 2, because Hideo Kojima has already announced that he's working on a game with Xbox called right now it's called Overdose. We don't know exactly if that's the actual name, if that's a working title, if that's a project code name, whatever it is. But we knew that was coming. And a lot of, as I even said in my live stream, as much as Norman Reedus has basically spoiled this announcement several times now, he's twice said that we're working on a Death Stranding 2 when that has not been confirmed or said anywhere else. It was still the shock that it, one, is actually true, And two, it's being worked on now in the same time as this Overdose game, because Kojima Productions is an indie studio. At the end of the day, for a lot of people, that it is an indie studio. So this is not your typical AAA studio with big money behind it that has large development teams. Like, Kojima Productions technically is still a small studio. And so the fact that they're going to be able to work on 2 games at the same time and follow up on, you know, what was kind of like an misunderstood game at first and now has turned into a beloved title, that is like a huge follow-up. So that was definitely probably the biggest surprise for me over the course of the show.
Yeah, going for that Death Stranding 2, by the way, apparently he had a story that he had written for it before the pandemic happened, and he completely scrapped it and rewrote the story after the pandemic, like taking in the stuff that happened that affected him and that affected people. So that's going to be interesting to see how that works itself into the story. So as I said at the top of the show, I did not actually get a chance to watch the entirety, even though I kept up on like the winners who did some good stuff. Stray had a good night, won some awards, and Marvel Snap. Congrats to Marvel Snap, the one mobile game of the year, like brand new for studio. Second Dinner, I believe it's their first game. Ben Brode and his team just hammered it down, nailed it. So congrats to them on getting that award. That was really cool to see. So I think for me personally, my favorite part, if I had a favorite part of the thing that of the show, was just seeing like kind of like all the discourse and like seeing like just people just like reacting and kind of like giving their thoughts and opinions. And I really enjoyed that aspect because just reminds me that people love video games, and it's not all great. The Sonic Frontiers versus Genshin Impact people, y'all gotta calm down. It's okay. Just because you didn't win an award, Sonic Frontiers, your game is you can still like your game. That's cool. You know, Genshin Impact people, like, you know, just everybody, you gotta take it easy. But the good discourse is what I'm talking about, because like people they really love their games, man. And it goes back to what you said, what you were talking about with Miyazaki. Like, we kind of sometimes we forget, because the AAA studios, we don't always get named people for this stuff. It's kind of like the people that are super in charge, or we'll get like Phil Spencer with Xbox, or Jim Ryan, I think, for Sony or whatever. We don't always get to see the human aspect. These people are artists, right? Like, they're authors, they're writers. This is something they do because they love it, because it's kind of like most professions, like pro wrestling, you know, getting into sporting events, like becoming an actor. You have to do this stuff because you like it, because sometimes you'll get to be like, you know, the Hulk Hogan's in wrestling, or the Shohei Ohtani's in baseball, or a high-profile actor like Brad Pitt, and you'll make a bunch of money. Most of the people don't. They're just like kind of like, they do this because they love it, and they don't hardly make any money off of it. And sometimes they hit it big, and they'll get something, and that's about all they do. They'll get like, you know, a decent name thing. So we got to remember though, like this is a lot of hard work that a lot of these people put into, the blood, sweat, and tears. And I really appreciate that you brought that up, and kind of like had it hit you that way. I think it's a really fascinating thing that whether you're gamers, whether you're developers, people love games. Mm-hmm. They love seeing games. They love playing games. They love certain games hit them in specific ways. It's fantastic, and I love that. The biggest surprise for me in terms of, I think in terms of like stuff, I think it might be Hades 2. I didn't even know I didn't know that was getting worked on at all. Hades is a great game. I never actually beat it because I'm terrible. But Hades, I'm really excited to see a Hades 2. It's going to be really fun. I'm really interested in seeing that. And but Diablo 4 was another big. I didn't think we were that close to having a release date for them. I mean, maybe I was wrong.
Did not think that either, honestly.
But that's coming out June 6th, 2023, at least for now. I'm sure it's a tentative date. They might push that back. But when I saw that was the thing that they were released, that was another big shock to me. I was like, oh, okay. You guys are a lot further along about that. And that was another one. I saw a tweet about that of one of the head developers, I think, talking about like, yeah, man, we put a lot of work into this and we're really happy we're kind of getting to the end game. So it goes back to that Miyazaki comment. And I think the last one, the Suicide Squad with the honor, Kevin Conroy. I had to shout out to that.
Yeah.
So I was really happy to see that. And then a smaller one, I've seen a lot of voice actors that I follow that I really enjoy talking big about Tekken 8, getting into that. So we got a little bit of Street Fighter 6, Tekken 8, like face off over the next year or so. So that's going to be interesting. There's a lot of stuff that was really cool and really fun to watch. To put a bow on this, I don't know if we really want to go to. Was there anything you think that the Game Show Awards, because you watched it, was there anything you think that they could necessarily improve upon to make it better?
Yes.
Okay.
There's a bunch of things, and obviously,
I guess name
like we could,
a couple of big things.
Yeah, and like we could obviously have an entire show just dedicated to this, but of course, since you weren't able to watch it, it didn't make sense to have an entire show around it. A couple of quick things though I do want to say before I get to that part. One of the things is biggest disappointment though, I will say, and this is just again a personal standpoint. My biggest disappointment was that Immortality didn't take any awards home. I understand that it was going up against a lot of heavy hitters, and FMV games are not super popular, but the way that game had been reviewed and received by those that did play it, I was hoping just that they would take at least one of the awards home. They didn't take any of them home. I also want to give disappointment in Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Again, we talked about it beforehand, being nominated for Game of the Year. We knew that wasn't going to be the case, but it just shows how well it was received. But it was up for music, and I thought that one had a chance to win it, and it didn't. So it was one of those things where I wish God of War Ragnarok took that one in that regard. And it's one of those things where it's like, again, I wish Xenoblade would have been able to take an award home and didn't. And then for announcements wise, there was a lot of awesome announcements, and I just want to echo kind of what you said with Hades 2. I felt like that was a given fact that Hades 2 would be coming. Of course, we had no clue that it would. And it's important to also know, for those that don't know, is this is Supergiant's first sequel. They have never made a sequel to a game that they've ever made before, and Hades 2 is the first time they're making a sequel. So like that was a shock in that regard too, is that a studio that never makes sequels is making a sequel. But it was kind of, again, similar to me. I felt like it was given that they would, because of just how well received Hades was, that they would just be like walking away from money on the table for doing that. The biggest thing, though, that I would say that that the Game Awards needs to work on is still timing. I think that, again, as you said, including the pre-show, which I streamed the entire thing, that's 3.5 hours long. And I get, the show wants to be the Oscars of gaming, and it's great and all that jazz, but it is still 3.5 hours is a very long time, especially if you're not
time to play games.
Yeah, especially if you're not there in the like actual event. It feels every bit of it at home, even with it having so many great announcements and award presentations and things like that. And then the other thing that I have to say is, this is not to discredit Chris Judge's speech at the beginning of the show. I know it was heartfelt. I know it was good. And if you go back and listen to it, taking the time into consideration, it was a very well done speech. However, having Al Pacino struggle to read the teleprompter to come out to start the show, who's not into gaming, and then have Chris Judge follow that up with a very dragged out speech, because there were a lot of pauses, a lot of like weird nuances to start it off. He finally found his footing, and like the speech meant well as it went on. But like that opening dragged out so much, and it did make the rest of the show feel as dragged out. And that, I know, wasn't planned. And I know they probably were not intending for it to happen, but like most things, you got to start off on a strong foot. And unfortunately for this year, it didn't. And that made the rest of the show feel like, holy crap, this is going on forever. Even with all the hype announcements. And like I said, it felt every bit as long as it did.
Yeah. So we talked about it before. Pro wrestling has taught me one thing about entertainment. You got to open big and you got to close big. And those are the two things. Those are the two most important spots to be on the pro wrestling card. And I think it's true of any movie, any entertainment, anything. You got to open big and you got to close big. So if you open like it's slow paced, it feels like it's trudging on. It just drags down the rest of the show, even if it's like only like the first hour. But if you drag that first half hour to an hour down, like you're already an hour in, and if this has got to go another 2 hours, it's like, oh man, we got to go still more for this. And like a lot of these issues, it sounds like it's like for 3.5 hours is a long time already. You just got to be better on pacing at that point. Like, you know, like just like you were saying, like the Al Pacino thing, I heard it was a lot of just like, I don't think I ever saw one good thing about the Al Pacino thing. And God bless Al Pacino. Like, he was great in a lot of movies. One of My Cousin Vinny is one of my favorite movies of all time. But like, I understand you want to get big names, but like, if he's not into gaming, what's the point? You could get Danny Trejo, who's like into magic. There's like so many like high profile actors that are into nerdy stuff. And like, I'm not saying all of them are going to want to be on this thing or attach their name to it, but it's like, man, like you could easily probably find somebody that like is into gaming or some kind of nerd culture. So that was a little bit of an odd duck.
Well, like going real quick with that, you don't think, like, not saying you and specifically, I mean rhetorically, but like you don't think that the gamers would have been happy to see Danny Trejo, and you don't think Danny Trejo would have been wanted to be on the show who's been in a video game? Like, he's been in video games?
Oh yeah, like I 100% believe Danny Trejo, unless he's like his schedule wouldn't allow it, would 100% have been there.
Yeah.
Like, so like, yeah, I 100% believe he could be there. So like, it's just like, you can do better than that. Like, come on, man.
The only way they tied Al Pacino in, and like, don't get me wrong, it felt good, like in the moment, so to speak, where it was like, oh, but it was like, you know, he's like, I'm not into gaming, but as a father, I watched my kids. Yeah, he's like, it might come. He goes, it might not come as a surprise, but I'm not a gamer. He goes, but then he like made the comment of like, but as most fathers do, I watched my kids play these games, and he like made this, then he did this speech about like, you know, and it shows, especially as games have gone on, how much actors bring to games, right? At the core, we're all actors, regardless of what we do. Like, he gave a great speech, but like he struggled to get to that point because he struggled reading the teleprompter, and he even said that. He goes, he like starts off and he's like, I cannot read the teleprompter, right? And it's like, oh my God, like this is already starting off rough. But
not
it's
not a great opening.
Yeah, but again, it's like, you know, when you get to that point, like it's like, okay, it's good. We got our feet back together. We're ready to go. And then he's like, they announce Chris Judge as the winner. He comes up, and then he has like long pauses between his talking points, and it dragged on forever. And then what made it worse was like, at least for me, is like, you know, I kept mentioning in my like in the stream, I'm like, play the Oscar music, like play it to get them off stage. Like, it's not to try to be like, hey, we don't want to hear your speech, but it's like it's dragging on, and we have a time commitment to get to.
Yeah, we gotta go. We gotta keep going.
Well, after a long period, they finally started playing that music, and Chris Judge basically used that music to just infuse his speech. Like, they never turned off his microphone. He kept talking over that music, and I'm like, yo, like, you just gotta shut him off. I'm getting this out
no matter what.
Yeah, it's like, you gotta just shut him off. And so again,
oh my God,
I'm not trying to discredit Chris Judge's speech. It was a great speech, and it was heartfelt. Like, I totally get it, but it's just for the timing, consistency, you can't have that. And I also want to say, I know there was a couple of articles off of it, kind of basically being like, we're not giving Chris Judge's speech the recognition it should. And it's like, I get it, but again, the speech basically, it did end up holding down the show because of how long it took. And that's the thing that people are like, focused on in the moment is like you said, we have 3 hours still to go. Like we gotta speed this thing up, make it go. So
you can't feel like you're dragging.
Yeah. So that we've obviously been talking about for quite a bit. Let's kind of move on to our next topic. Yep. We'll have to kind of rush through these a little bit because of the time's sake there. But we kind of figured that was going to happen. We're going to The Verge for this next article. This one is written by Tom Warren and Jay Peters, and it is called "The FTC is Suing Microsoft to Block Its Activision Blizzard Purchase," and it goes as follows. The FTC has filed a legal challenge to try and block Microsoft's plan to buy Activision Blizzard for $68.7 billion, according to a press release from the regulator. The lawsuit was filed back on December 8th, which is a Thursday. After weeks of back and forth between Microsoft, Sony, and regulators over competition concerns and the future of Call of Duty. The FTC argues that the acquisition would enable Microsoft to suppress competitors to its Xbox gaming consoles and its rapidly growing subscription content and cloud gaming business. You can read the FTC's complaint, or, of course, if you go to this article, you can read it at the very bottom of this article. The vote from the FTC commissioners means that Microsoft now faces significant hurdles in getting its Activision Blizzard deal complete. Regulators in the UK and EU are also scrutinizing the deal closely, despite Microsoft's repeated attempts to appease regulators. Quote, Microsoft has already shown that it can and will withhold content from its gaming rivals, Holly Vendova, director of the FTC's Bureau of Competition, said in a statement. Quote, today we seek to stop the Microsoft from gaining control over a leading independent game studio and using it to harm competition in multiple dynamics and fast-growing gaming markets. There's a lot to this article, so because of timing's sake, we're going to kind of move on. I know, Pete, you've read it. So let me ask you, we kind of knew this was coming. It has been kind of rumored or basically said that it was going to be coming at some point. It's finally here. What is your thoughts now after seeing the suit go through?
First thing I'm going to say is if I had to put money down, and I'm not like 100% confident, so I had to put money down, Microsoft probably wins in the end. They'll get the deal done. It's part of the reason we discussed when this deal was originally started. They projected it to be like June 2023 when the deal would actually be done, because they probably expected something like this could happen. Maybe not an actual lawsuit, but the FTC would kind of be like very thorough and fact checking all this stuff. There was a couple things in the article that were interesting to me. I'm going to go with the more funny one first. Towards the bottom of the article, the Microsoft president Brad Smith in the Wall Street Journal op-ed recently said that Sony is excited about this deal as Blockbuster was about the rise of Netflix, and it really seems like to me that if you want to make people excited about you taking on a major developer and publisher of gaming, is to compare your acquisition to streaming service that basically killed the entire business model. So that's definitely something you want to bring up. It seemed really odd to do that. Another thing that I kind of was looked at was Frank X. Shaw, who's Microsoft's corporate vice president of communications, tweeted a link to a document titled "Get the Facts: How Microsoft is Committed to Growing Gaming Communities," and I kind of skimmed it. I didn't read it that thoroughly, but it seemed like through the skimming, a lot of the explanation was, well, when we acquired because part of the lawsuit mentions the ZeniMax deal and how some of ZeniMax's stuff is being made as Xbox exclusives now. Well, so they discussed that in this document that that Shaw tweeted out. And it says, well, we acknowledged and agreed to follow through with ZeniMax's deals when we acquired them for Sony, which is like, yeah, they were contractually, they signed a contract and were contractually obligated before this, which if you wanted to break those contracts, you probably would have had to file a lawsuit or file a questioning and break the contract itself, which, probably wouldn't have been worth your time. But also, so they also brought up Starfall and what was it? What are the games? Redfall and let me do a quick.
It's
Starfield and Redfall. And basically, and I'll read it word for word because I got it up here. The reason why that making those games specific to Xbox, even though I believe one of them at least was originally like is going to be multi-platform, is well, it's not a problem because it's a single player game. It has no pre-existing sales, revenue, or community of gamers on any console, much less PlayStation, that would be impacted by an exclusivity division or decision, which is like, well, yeah, it is because uh, just because there's not a fan base that exists yet because the game's brand new doesn't mean that it being exclusive to Xbox doesn't harm Sony in that regard. So there's a little bit of like, if you like Xbox and want this deal to go through, you probably acknowledge it. And if you don't like Xbox and don't want this deal to go through, you're probably going to think it's a bunch of garbage. It seemed to me more like it was just like lip service more than anything. I don't think it proved or disproved anything in that regard. But it seems like I said, at the end of the day, I don't think that the FTC is going to win this battle. But it's not implausible that it happens that way. And as much as Activision Blizzard is like really full on support because, they get $69 million and all their big wigs that have been in trouble with, the practices that they've had at the company itself for years and years, they get basically a big payday and walk away from any problems. They still get $3 billion if it doesn't go through. So they're kind of just like, well, whatever. I mean, it's a win-win situation for us. So yeah, go ahead and fight, whatever, fine. So that was kind of like my takeaway from it. It was like, yeah, this was coming, but I still assume it's just more of a delay tactic than anything else.
Yeah, so I know what I'm about to say. I'm going to get some hate for, and that's like completely understandable. As you said, if you are an Xbox fan, you're rooting for this to happen. If you're a PlayStation fan, in a sense, you're not rooting for this to happen. I have no, basically fight in the game because I own both. So like, in a sense, I will get to play either regardless of how this shapes out. But I feel a lot of the arguments have been in bad faith, honestly, that are coming from Microsoft. And like, as you said, at the end of the day, I think it's going to go through. FTC, I made mention of it when we talked about the lawsuit possibly coming. It's like the FTC has not won any of these challenges that they've kind of put out in a while. And I think most of them are exactly what you said. They're a delay tactic to try to come to an agreement behind the scenes for like all these people that are at play. But, let's just start with the biggest one, I think, that kind of came out is before this lawsuit came out, Microsoft all of a sudden announced, hey, we have signed a 10-year agreement to bring Call of Duty to Nintendo for the next 10 years. Oh, and we also have signed an agreement with Steam to do the same. Call of Duty has not been on Nintendo for many years now. Like the last one, Call of Duty was on Nintendo, was on Wii U, and it did not sell well. It did not do well. It did not perform well. Same thing with the Wii version of Call of Duty 3. It did not do well. It did not sell well. It did not perform well. And so the fact that now they're like, hey, we're going to sign this agreement with Nintendo, some people have been like touting this as like, oh, see, here's exactly what they're doing. No, this is definitely just a bad faith argument going, look, we agreed to a 10-year deal with Nintendo because Nintendo has they have no history of seeing that the game is coming. So, of course, they're going to be like, sure, we'll sign it. Like, bring it to us. Awesome. But we all know it's not going to be the same version as the other games because it's just not possible, especially for the Nintendo Switch, unless all of a sudden Nintendo brings out some beefy console. But looking at Nintendo's history, that's not happening. It's going to be another, in a sense, gimmicky console for Nintendo. And that's what Nintendo fans want. Steam, on the other hand, has always been getting Call of Duty. And even with the, in a sense, the games being exclusive to Xbox, where does Xbox still put their games even when they're exclusive? On Steam. Like, so again, it's a bad faith argument because it's like Steam has no stake in the game. And the owner of Steam, Gabe Newell, if I remember correctly, is his last name. I just remember his first name, Gabe. Him making the comment of like, well, we didn't need this because Xbox has always followed through with what they told us. Again, you've been getting the game regardless. So it's like, it's not even like that is a good showing. Like they're just trying to like point fingers at Sony and being like, look, see, this is Sony's problem because they're not willing to accept these things. anyone that these are like red herring type arguments that, like, if you're looking at the actual situation at hand, these are to try to distract you and bring distraction to the argument at hand. That's not the argument at hand. The argument is about PlayStation and Xbox, the two actual rivals, so to speak, when it comes to this whole deal. And so, like, I just find it ridiculous in that sense. And then the other part that I find ridiculous is like how, you know, in a sense that Sony has said, and the FTC has said too, that Microsoft misled the European antitrust regulators with the ZeniMax deal when it came to, as you said, Starfield and Redfall. And there's so many people being like, well, no, they said legacy titles, not future titles. But Elder Scrolls 6 has already been rumored and hinted at that that'll be exclusive to Xbox, which is a legacy title. Like, so there, you know, then people are trying to twist it to be like, well, no, they're talking about legacy as in like games that have already released. And it's like, again, we're changing the goalpost here. And that's the biggest problem. And I think that's what the FTC is trying to point at. And that's what Sony is trying to point at. And, you know, as you talked about before, a lot of people keep pointing at Call of Duty. But like, here's another example of these are more things at play than just Call of Duty. Call of Duty makes a lot of money. Of course, that makes sense. But we're talking about the history of all these deals going on and what it means. At the end of the day, again, for me, I don't care because I'm going to get to play it regardless. Like, I care to an extent, to a certain degree as a gamer, because as we've talked about, we don't want a conglomeration, basically one company controlling everything. But I will still get to play these games. But what I don't like and what drives me up the wall is when I see bad faith arguments being placed out and people taking them at face value as if this is the haha gotcha moment. And these are not aha gotcha moments. These are bad faith arguments. Like we've talked about, put it in writing, get something out there, and have something signed. And you could look at Nintendo's agreement or Steam's agreement and say, well, there's something in writing. But what I'm trying to say is put something in writing that both Sony and Xbox actually see as good writing arguments documentation, because these are bad faith arguments and all they do is cause more confusion and it cause more animosity amongst gamers. And like, it has driven me nuts seeing this all come out.
Yeah, division has been a tactic for companies for a pretty significant while now, probably about the last 8 to 10 years. So divide and conquer, that's what they love to do now. So just why are you trying to drive a wedge between gamers and fans? It's just like, what's the point? Like you said, put something in writing. If Microsoft really cared about like this being something that they wanted to settle, they could almost certainly easily settle it and give something that Sony would be agreeable with, that Microsoft would also like be like, yeah, we're totally fine with this. And the fact that it hasn't happened yet is both a problem of both Sony but also Microsoft. And to just point at one or the other, just point at Sony being the problem is like, come on, man. Think about this logistically. Like,
both companies have problems in this whole argument. Like,
100%.
Let's be realistic here. Sony is basically right now, like, if I'm going to try to point fingers or try to, summarize it, Sony is basically being the spoiled brat at the moment, right? They have gotten this game, Call of Duty, on their system, and it sells so well, it makes them hotcakes, and it's like the sucker that's being handed to them and goes, actually, I'm possibly going to take that sucker back. And the kid crying because of the possibility their sucker is going to be gone, right? They're being the spoiled brat in this situation. Microsoft, on the other hand, is being the bully, so to speak, in this situation, where like the looming threat of the bully doing anything gives them enjoyment, and basically then all they have to be like, again, to the parents around the room is like, I haven't done anything, I'm just sitting here, I'm just standing here, right? I'm just doing this. But like everyone else is looking at it like at the perspective, it goes, yeah, but they're threatening the situation, right? Like they're threatening the problem. So like there's both problems at hand. And I'm not saying that this is the solution, but I want to be like clear in, like, as you said, if they truly want to make this happen, there is an easy way to do this. and again, we're making it very simple, but I'm just kind of using this as an argument. If Xbox is truly saying the reason they want this deal is they want gaming to be available for all, like in most places, they don't want exclusives, X, Y, and Z, however you want to say that they're spinning this thing, because they are basically saying, and they have said that they want more options for gamers. Then Microsoft put in writing that as long as Sony has a console, you will put Activision's games on that console. Put it in writing, right? I get that as businesses develop, your viewpoints may change. And that is what they're trying to do, is they're trying to leave open the door that if they change at some point, that they want to have the possibility to actually make that change. Then come outright and say that. Don't say, we want more options for gamers. We're not trying to take away options for gamers. Because if you're trying to give options to gamers and you're not trying to take it away, then put in writing, as long as Sony has a console, we will put Activision Blizzard games on there. But they don't want to, because they want to have that chance to change it. That's why they only want to give an option of Call of Duty for 10 years. So again, that's the bad faith argument that's going out there, and that's what drives me nuts. Like, quit speaking these things, but not actually following through with it. That's what drives me nuts. So
100%.
God.
Anyway, we got to move on a little bit.
Yes.
So
I know. It's just another thing. It's been driving me
frustrating.
nuts. It's been driving
frustrating.
me nuts. Anyway, so just because of timing's sake, we're going to make these next things very quickly. Microsoft is going to be increasing the first party prices of Xbox Series games in the new year to $70. This is coming from Game Informer, written by Marcus Stewart, and it is, of course, announced that Microsoft has said in the beginning of 2023 they will be moving prices for Xbox Series games to $70. The IGN first confirmed this news with Microsoft spokesperson telling the outlet that this price reflects the content scale, technical complexity of these titles, using examples as like Starfield, Redfall, and Forza Motorsports will be the $70 price tag. The price of Xbox Game Pass appears unaffected, as the spokesperson said, quote, "As with all games developed by our teams at Xbox, they will be available with Xbox Game Pass the same day they launch." Of course, this is not surprising with the increasing costs of AAA game developments. Prices had been only a matter of time to rise. Of course, we'd seen the rise going on in PlayStation already and with other developers. So Pete, I guess for me, two questions essentially. One, what's your thoughts about Xbox raising the prices? But then two, do you think Game Pass is coming, a price increase on Game Pass is coming somewhere down the line?
So the answer to your first question, it's not surprising. Like you mentioned, Sony's already done this. Take-Two was the first one to start doing it. It's important to note that these are only for the current gen titles, so PS4 and Xbox One games. Those have remained at $60, and it looks like that's how it is going forward, which is a standard that was set with PS3 and Xbox 360. But every couple of generations, they increase the price by $10. Like I just mentioned, PS3, Xbox 360 jumped from $50 to $60. So jumping from $60 to $70, kind of a thing that was going to happen. A little bit surprising it didn't happen at the launch of these next gen titles. But very grateful that they didn't do it right off the top. It sucks. I mean, it's more expensive games, but for gamers. But I mean, costs go up, and hopefully, I'm not saying it will happen, but hopefully that's more money that's going to the people working on this stuff, and not so much going to the shareholders. But of course, we all know how that usually works out. As for the Game Pass price increase, if I had to guess, at some point, or they'll make a tier where it's like you can get these Xbox Series games, but you have to pay a higher. They'll move those games up a tier, kind of thing. That'd be my assumption to happen at some point. Probably by the holidays of next year, or maybe just after, since Xbox waited until 2023 to increase the price to $70 for this one. But I mean, I can't imagine that they'd want to lose out on that extra cash for their first party games. They're increasing that by $10 and then not getting any benefit from the Game Pass in that regard. So I assume there'll be some kind of price jump at some point next year or so.
Yeah, I think that Xbox waited as long as they could, basically, without increasing the prices because they just wanted, they got dominated in the last generation in sales. Like there's just no way to sugarcoat that. And so I think they wanted kind of that good faith effort in a sense to be like, look, we're not raising our prices, so come jump on ours. And if you want Game Pass, great. If not, you still save yourself $10 with these releases. But it was a matter of time, as you said. It was going to come at some point. And I think the same thing happens with Game Pass. Now, like, just using, historical factors, of course, at some point, Game Pass price will increase. Like, that's just the way it is. Unless all of a sudden inflation aspects, stymie and don't increase. And, like, all of a sudden the dollar becomes more profitable in a sense. But, like, someone that always brings it up whenever you see price increases, like back in the 90s, actually a lot of games did cost quite a bit. Like there were games that cost $70 even at that time. And then there just became this norm all of a sudden out of nowhere that was like, oh, games are $50. Oh, games are $60. And now, of course, games are $70. So at some point, I think Xbox Game Pass price will increase. I don't know how much. And I agree with you. I think it'll likely happen. Not like right before the holidays, but I think sometime next year, it's just going to come an announcement that they're going to be like, hey, we're increasing the price by like, $5, maybe $2, type of thing. Because they're hoping still like, hey, we increased the price of our Game Pass, or we increased the prices of our Game Pass games, but Game Pass is still the better deal. So why don't you just get Game Pass and get all these games for that one price? And of course that's why Game Pass is awesome. But it's not necessarily a like, hey, we're increasing the games for $10 because we're going to get $10 more from every person who buys it. It's to drive people more towards Game Pass, and that's just the way it is. And the last thing I want to say, and you kind of pointed it out, I did have it in our show notes, is I had seen, even in this article, a lot of people kind of point to, well, like, Sony was the first one to raise $70 to their prices. That's not true. Like, now, Sony did say they were going to do it, but the first first company to go to $70 was Take-Two, and it was for NBA 2K. Like, they had announced, hey, the new console, we're raising the price $10, and they were the first ones to do it. But a lot of people, again, bad faith arguments, try to say that Sony was the first one. They weren't. It was a Take-Two. Sony was just the first
one, honestly. Who cares?
Yeah, it's one of those bad faith arguments that I've seen on social media so much. But it's just kind of establishing, like, let's be realistic here. That's not the case. But like it was going to happen at some point. And I don't think Nintendo joins them anytime soon at the moment because of the Nintendo Switch. But I do think that price tag could increase when it comes to their next console, whatever generation, whatever that might be, the Nintendo Switch Pro or anything like that.
Yeah, because technically Switch is technically last gen, right? It's not
correct. Correct. Yeah, okay. And I think that it would be harder for Nintendo to justify a $10 increase in their prices without having an improved performance console in hand. 100%. Like Sony and Xbox get away with it because, of course, these consoles, like, I'm pointing to my PS5 right now, but like they pack a punch. The Switch doesn't.
PCs. They're basically PCs at this point.
Yeah, so
also really a lot harder to sell those Pokemon Scarlets with all them issues at $70 and $60.
Yeah, I definitely think that would be a lot harder. Anyway. Real quickly, because of timing's sake, we're going to just briefly touch on this. But CD Projekt Red is ceasing development on Gwent. There will be 72 new cards released in 2023. That will be the last time that new cards are coming out for it. And in 2024, a small team will be basically put in maintenance mode to work on Gwent. But they say that Gwent's community will be given tools to continue balancing and playing the game. So, Pete, did you ever play Gwent? And what is your thoughts about, of course, Gwent getting put essentially on the back burner?
Very briefly played it. It wasn't really a card game that I was interested in for long. I haven't really played much of The Witcher, so that's part of it. I'm bummed out because, I know there's a decent fan base. It's a very kind of like cult hit sort of a game. There's a lot of people that I know that enjoyed playing the game, as there was a big push as being one of the like the alternatives to like Magic and Hearthstone and all that earlier on, especially. So it's kind of a bummer to go see it go down, but it's really hard to have a lot of these card games keep up to snuff. And I mean, the game technically opened in was it, May of 2017 with an open beta, and then officially launched a little over a year and a half later. So I mean, it's basically a 5-year run. That's almost as much as you can expect from the card game like this. So kudos to them making it that far. It's usually like, I think 5 to 7 years as a lot of these games last. So the fact that it went on that long and you can still play it. It's not like some other games we talked about where they just take it down completely. Looking at you, you know who. But but it's a bummer because I know there's a lot of fans and they won't be getting new cards.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things. I never really played Gwent. Similarly as you, I played it a little bit, but I actually only played Gwent in The Witcher 3. Like, I played it a little bit in that regard. And it was just one of those things where if I spent more time in The Witcher 3, maybe I understood the card game more, but I just didn't really fully understand it. But of course, I did love the art of it and how it looks. So as you said, it's kind of what and kind of expected at some point it's going to happen because of it being a digital game. But now we're of course got more things to look at, and I wonder what will replace it, if there will be, from CD Projekt Red, because they have a lot of Witcher games coming up, and Gwent, a new iteration of Gwent, could be coming down the line at some point. However, when is that going to be? Again, sometime possibly down the road. But if you want to get a game this week, I could tell you all about what's coming out this week. And we're starting with yesterday. On Friday, December 9th, we have Choo Choo Charles for PC. By the way, I just want to quickly mention, I didn't realize that was a horror game until I saw it earlier this week and was like, oh, that looks creepy as hell. So totally go look at it. Choo Choo Charles for PC, Dragon Quest Treasures for Switch, Jitsu Squad for PS5, PS4, and Switch, Adventure Academia, The Fractured Continent for PS4 and Switch, Afterglitch for Xbox One and PC. On Monday, December 12th, you have Wavetale for PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. Tuesday, December 13th, you have Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion for PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. Gris for PS5 and Xbox Series, High on Life for Xbox Series, Xbox One, and PC. That is on Game Pass. Neon White, PS5 and PS4. Infinite Guitars for Xbox One, Switch, and PC. Wednesday, December 14th, you have Lil Gator Game for Switch and PC. The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt for PS5, Xbox Series, and that is the free update also for current gen owners if you don't want to buy it on PS5 and Xbox Series. That's also a free update for the PC version, by the way, too. Formula Retro Racing World Tour for PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, and Switch. On Thursday, December 15th, you have Aka for Switch and PC, Blacktail for PS5, Xbox Series, and PC, The Crack Pet Show for Switch and PC, Melatonin for PC, Bots Are Stupid for PC, and then Friday, December 16th, you have Resident Evil 7 Biohazard for Switch, The Block for PC, The Fantastic Pity Roo for PC, and Cygnus Enterprises Steam Early Access for PC. Pete, any of these catching your attention?
Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion. Really interested to see where they go with the story, what additions they might make to make it more in line with the current generation of games. But Crisis Core, the original, was a fantastic game. I love playing it. One of the best endings of any game ever, honestly. Even though you know how it ends, it's pretty amazing. Some of the other games I was looking at, Wavetale was pretty cool. I was kind of interested in that. Neon White, I believe this is a game that released earlier this year. It was on it was nominated for several awards at the Game Awards. Now it's getting a PS5 and PS5, PS4 release. And then Gris also looked like it was kind of interesting. One of those journey games that I played early on. The where you go around and kind of like look at it's like a puzzle platformer, but you don't really like have any like danger or dying or things like that. You just kind of like try to figure out and explore the world.
Yeah, Gris is definitely a game that was received very well when it originally came out on PS4, Xbox, and Switch, if I remember correctly. So kind of glad to see it get another release and hopefully continues to get received very well. Dragon Quest Treasures is the one for me. Crisis Core, of course, is another one for me. Neon White, I've made mention before. But the two that I want to really kind of point to is Melatonin. Seemed really cool. I dug what I saw of that. It's more, they say it's like a rhythm platformer, and so I enjoyed the trailer that I saw for that. And then the last one that I actually want to make mention of it, I don't know how it will actually play, but on paper, or on the video I should say, it looked cool. Bots Are Stupid Like, Bots Are Stupid is basically Mario Maker, but it is coding. So, like, you have to, like, type in what you want your character to do, and then you hit play, and then it does the things to try to, like, finish the level. And I find that really interesting because it also could help spark some people's interest into coding. So I just thought it was cool.
Oh,
Pete,
God, we're going to have so many people that are going to play that game, and then they're just going to think they're masters of coding and just, like, give explanations on social media about, like, no, this is how it actually works. And then it's just like all the people that I know that actually code are just like, oh, my God, what?
Hey,
I can just see it now. I can just see it now. It's going to be so bad.
I can see it. But like I said, for me, it's one of those things of, I think it could be a great way in sparking, interest into actual coding. So I just find that the cool aspect in that regard.
100%.
We've made mention before, but video games are awesome, but they require people to make those video games. And this could be that, that itch or that step to get someone into, like, hey, I want to make video games.
Sure.
So go
Hopefully
check that out.
That way.
Yes, but all right, that has been our episode. It's been, of course, a little bit longer, but we had some great discussions on this one. Pete, is there anything you want to leave our listeners with before we send them off into the rest of the weekend? This
may not be a popular opinion. I love college football bowl season, and it starts in about a week, and I am excited to get to see all that. Also, the World Cup has been fantastic.
Oh yeah, it is.
And like, I'm not saying I'm a big soccer fan, but that's another one of the things where people watch 30 minutes of a match and all of a sudden they're experts. I try not to be like that, but I guess I kind of play someone like that on this podcast anyway. So I mean, there you go. But so those are the two things. World Cup final is next Sunday, I believe. The semifinals are Tuesday. Morocco making a big run. Croatia making the comeback. I'm really, really excited to see how that ends, and then bowl season as well, like I said.
Yeah, I will agree with you to an extent with bowl season. I love bowl season. I do think, of course, we've gotten, as many have said, we've gotten to the point where there's like too many bowls where everyone has a bowl game. Like, even there's probably the Pete Leisure, Santa Hat Bowl that's going on. Man,
if I'm going to put something on in the background that I'm not going to pay attention to anyway, I'd much rather it be a football game than the litany of other garbage that's already on TV. So
hey, again, I love football. I love college football. So I'm not complaining. I'm just saying, like, sometimes it's hard to keep up with all the bowl games out there. But I also agree with you. The World Cup has been awesome. So hopefully people continue to enjoy that. But that's all that we have here for the One More Game podcast. I've been one of your co-hosts, Jeremy Culver, a.k.a. Darce. This has been the California Thirst Quencher, Pete Leisure, and we really enjoy bringing this to you. So as always, everybody, stay hydrated, stay healthy, stay safe, and keep on gaming. We'll see you guys on the next episode.